Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV. We are live on radio and we'll have our video up on YouTube and BitChute. Again, we are welcome with Brother Alexis Bonolo. And today's show is going to be very special because we want you to take part and call in. Let's see here. There we go. So how do you call in? We have a Skype studio number. To call in to ask any questions, go to, if you are international, +1 785 672 9560, and anywhere in the USA, 785 672 9560. Our first topic today is, who is Father Malachi Martin? Now, he is a very interesting person, interesting man, and priest. Many in the traditional Catholic circles recommend him, and I'm stuck in not work and trying to work through his huge book, Windswept House. I had to put it down due to some very evil parts and graphic images that is in the book. Not photos, but he describes the rituals. I do not know how he knows what these rituals are or how he could describe them, what happened. I don't know much about this man, and listening to the Mike Church show on the Veritas Radio Network with Marina Bartold, who wrote a book on Our Lady of Fatima, Signs and Secrets, a very great book. They mentioned this priest and how he saw the third secret. So while I was off of radio and thinking on new shows when I returned, one had to be on this priest. Who is he? Did he remain a priest? And why did he toss off his clerics and wear lay clothing? And what is his relationship to the message of Fatima? Welcome, Brother Alexis Bonolo.
Thank you, AJ. Always a pleasure to be on Order Militaris Radio TV. And especially today, I think this is going to be one of our first live shows.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we are going to be touching on a topic people would consider third rail material that you don't usually want to touch on. Who is Father Malachi Martin?
Okay, so Father Malachi Martin is a real character, and if you're a Catholic in the English-speaking world, but especially in the United States, you're almost certain you've heard his name. He's famous for his novels, which are sometimes, you could say, are fantastic or lurid or sensationalist. I remember when I was in college back in the 80s, reading his Windswept House, those books. It was all the rage. Everyone was like, oh, have you read this latest book? And things like that. And it had a reputation for being, yes, extremely graphic in some things. So I never actually read them because I'm not interested in novels. And I heard he was a Jesuit. So, but even if you haven't read his novels, he is an important person in Catholic history and the English-speaking world in the second half of the 20th century. So it's good to know something about him, be able to understand where he's coming from and why he wrote. So he was born on the 23rd of July, 1921, the interwar years. His father was an Englishman that had moved to Ireland, and his mother was native Irish. And he grew up in a middle-class family. They spoke the Irish language at the table, not English. He was born in Ballylongford, County Kerry, Ireland. And his father was Connor Martin, and his mother was Catherine Fitzmaurice. And there were 5 sons and 5 daughters. So this was a really devout Catholic family. They believed in big families, the way Catholic families did back then, and that's a beautiful thing. And 4 of the 5 sons became priests, and he was one of them. He had a younger brother, Francis Xavier Martin, who was rather famous in Dublin in his own lifetime. So he took his secondary education at Belvedere College in Dublin. He studied philosophy for 3 years at the University College in Dublin. Just a few days after World War II broke out, he joined the Societies of Jesus, and on the 6th of September 1939. He went on to teach for 3 years at Milton Park, Dublin, and was ordained a priest in 1954. So that's about 8 years before the council. He went on to study at the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium, one of the centers of Catholic education in Europe, even though it was very liberal in the post-war period. It was becoming very un-Catholic. He got a doctorate in archaeology, so I got a respect from that because I have a BA in anthropology, archaeology, so it's a related field. He studied Oriental history, Semitic languages, and then he took postgraduate studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the University of Oxford. He specialized in intertestamental studies, knowledge of Jesus Christ, Hebrew, Arabic manuscripts. He undertook additional study in rational psychology, experimental psychology, physics, and anthropology. So he actually said you might say he was a scripture scholar, kind of New Testament scholar. He was actually one of the researchers on the Dead Scrolls, and he published 24 articles in Semitic paleography in various journals. So he was a very learned man in this kind of topic, studied the texts discovered of Biblos. And a lot of work that was really all the rage in the 50s. It was the end of the war. There was a lot of money coming in to do these kind of studies. And the Dead Sea Scrolls were scrolls of the Essene community, a Jewish sect that existed about the time of Christ. And there was big speculation where was this the community where John the Baptist was? And the scholars today don't think John the Baptist had anything really to do with this group, nor did Jesus Christ, but it was an interesting archaeological discovery. So from that, he leaped to become a private secretary of Cardinal Augustin Bea, who was a Jesuit. And he served as his private secretary of 58 to 64. He probably wasn't the only one. Most cardinals had several. And he personally met John the 23rd. He was in Rome for the council, and he was coming to Rome to serve Cardinal Bea. He was already like a liberal Catholic, as I said, Louvain's kind of liberal. But the changes that Vatican II introduced really shook him to the core, and he ends up getting dispensed from being a Jesuit, and basically resigns from being a priest in public. He still says, he still acts like a priest in private, but he, from that point on, doesn't take up any pastoral assignment after like 64. At Rome, he was a professor at the Pontifical Biblical Institute. He taught Aramaic, paleography, Hebrew, sacred scripture. He worked as a translator for the Orthodox churches and ancient Oriental churches division of the Secretary for Promoting Christian Unity. So he was very much involved in inter-religious dialogue at the time of the council. And he was well acquainted with prominent Jewish leaders who were invited to attend. And it was in February 65 that he requested release from the Jesuit order. So evidently the personal exam of Paul VI didn't convince him to remain a Jesuit, know what was going on. Then he starts next part of his life was like really strange, like what's going on in this priest's life, because he gives up being a Jesuit and then he moves to the United States, where he gets a job and ends up becoming a US citizen. But what does he do? He doesn't go and all of a sudden become a priest there and start working as a priest. No, He went to New York City and he became a dishwasher, a waiter, and a taxi driver, and a writer. And he founded an antique shop, and he spent his rest of his life writing and doing things like that. And he did. It is said he had permission from Cardinal Terence Cook to be a priest in private, say mass in private. Here's where things get strange. And so in '67, he received his first Guggenheim Fellowship. Now, you know anything about the Guggenheim Fellowship, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get a Guggenheim Fellowship, which is a paid, it's like a scholarship. You're paid to do research or writing or investigation. You don't get this unless you're really connected and not with, and in non-Catholic circles. I don't quote me. I'm not an expert in the Guggenheim fellowships, but I don't think if you're a faithful Catholic you would get that, or if you were. So he was a real hobnobber, and he got the Guggenheim Fellowship twice. He used his first one to write the book Encounter Religion in Crisis, kind of as a result of his expertise. And he was talking about the religious changes in the world and the conflicts from that. You see a lot of books in the '60s like that. They're like more of those written than there's straw of hay in a hay pile, and they're all kind of useless things that probably won't ever last the test of history. He won a book award from the American Library Association for that book. The American Library Association is a Masonic association, so you can start saying, well, you know, this is kind of strange. Then he wrote other books. He wrote Three Popes and the Cardinal, The Church of Pius, John, and Paul, in his encounter with human history in 1972. And he wrote a book called Jesus Now in '73, and he became a citizen in 1970. He got his second Guggenheim in '69, 2 years after his first one, which is like unheard of that you would get two. And he used the money to write his first 4 bestsellers: Hostage to the Devil, The Possession and Exorcism of 5 Living Americans. He, in that book, claimed to be an experienced exorcist, although experts say the book is a complete fantasy, and he was just trying to cash in on the fascination with exorcism. He put himself forward as a person who was an expert in the paranormal, and he often appeared on Art Bell's radio program. A bit before my time, but Art Bell was one of the most popular radio programs in America at the time. He ran a program called Coast to Coast AM, and they used to play his interviews at Halloween time. He became a religious editor for the National Review. So if you know anything about the National Review, this is arch conservative publication. Definitely, I would call Masonic deep state. Wrote for them from '72 to '78. And then he was succeeded there by Michael Novak, who was an editor for the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I don't know on what, maybe on some topic of Semitic manuscripts. He wrote an article, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Then he became a really popular writer, writing sensationalist books. The Final Conclave in '78, King of Kings, a novel for the life of David, 1980. Vatican, a novel, 1986. The Decline and Fall of the Roman Church, 1981. The New Castle, Reaching for the Ultimate, 1982. Rich Church, Poor Church, the Catholic Church and Its Money, 1984. There Is Still Love, 5 Parables of God's Love That Will Change Your Life, 1984. And his best-selling nonfiction book was The Jesuits, The Society of Jesus and the Betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church, highly critical of the order. And written by an ex-Jesuit. They must consider that the one, you know, the black mark on his career. But still, he wrote even more famous books. The Keys of This Blood, The Struggle for World Domination Between Pope John Paul II, Michael Gorbachev, and the Capitalist West, which he published in 1990, which was all the rage when it came out. And he followed that up in 1996 with Windswept House, a Vatican novel, which is perhaps the most sensational and lurid of all his novels. And from the point of history of Catholic literature in the United States, will certainly be on the list of more widely read or influential books to get people to start asking questions, because Catholics always believe that everyone in the Vatican is pretty much, you know, at least in America, they believe pretty much pious and everything's going well. But with the publication of that book, we realized that there's probably a lot of corruption going on, and what is really going on, we don't know. But so a lot of people read it to try to understand what is going on in the Vatican, although, as I said, there's really, as you can see, he wasn't working in the Vatican for 30 years before he wrote that book. So is he a reliable source for anything going on? Did he still have friends? Chances are no one in the 60s was still in the Vatican in the 90s, but he's Irish, and Irish are great tall tale tellers. If you've ever known Irish, and I've had a lot of Irish friends, so I know that. And they'll tell you the tallest tale with the straightest face until the end. They laugh at you because you believed it. And that's a standard narrative technique among the Irish, and they're great with oral traditions that way. So he was known in Tridentine Mass circles for saying the Tridentine Mass, and he kind of built up a following with that. And he died in Manhattan in 1999, 4 days after his 78th birthday. He fell in his apartment and got a hemorrhage in his head. And so he has, and he passed away shortly thereafter. I guess it doesn't say exactly how many days it took him to pass away. So he wrote some books under pseudonym. The Pilgrim, Pope Paul VI, The Council and the Church in a Time of Decision in 1964, under the name Michael Serafian. He admitted to have being the real author. The Jewish Question, the Second Vatican. In that book, he talks about the Jewish Question, the Second Vatican Council, on all the maneuvers that were done to change the teaching of the Catholic Church on its relationship with Jews. And that was one of his more famous anonymous writings. He was a big promoter of Fatima. So he lauded Father Gruner for his work to defend the true meaning of Fatima. He claimed to have been in the hallway as John the 23rd and Cardinal Bea behind closed doors were reading The Secret and deciding not to ever talk about it. And is that true or not? Who's to say? He never endorsed Medjugorje. He made some claims that he claimed, for example, that Pius XI was murdered by Mussolini, and that John Paul I was murdered by Jean-Marie Villot, Cardinal Secretary of State, and he's not the only one that claimed that. Others claimed that. So he came to be a source in the United States, at least, as kind of like an insider who knows what's going on in the Vatican. But is that really true? You know, he gave some credence to the Giuseppe theory thesis that something was going on in the conclave of 58 and conclave of 63, namely that Cardinal Siri did receive enough votes to be Pope, but before he accepted, he was threatened and coerced not to accept. That actually doesn't make the election invalid. Only coercion to give it up makes renunciation invalid, but coercion not to accept doesn't make the election invalid. So he made certain claims like that. So that's basically who Malachi Martin was. There's other controversies about him. We could talk.
Yeah, let's reset here. Okay. You're listening to Ordo Militaris Radio TV live at ordo-militaris.net. This portion of the show is asking you to make a very generous donation so that Ordo Militaris Radio TV can get a banner on a major Catholic website to keep boosting our numbers, getting more listeners, more viewers, more subscribers to get this awesome radio station and its message out to you. Yeah.
Okay. I encourage you to do that. Neither AJ nor I take any salary, and Order Militaris Radio TV he's running it. He's the director manager, and he's running it as apostolate. So if you donate $200 towards this publicity effort, then I, as president of Order Militaris, I will donate an additional $200, and a matching. So every dollar you donate, because the advertisement will cost $400, and that will enable us to get Order Militaris known among Catholic radio in the United States, which I think is important because we just have too much controlled media, too many empty talking heads that aren't really Catholic. They are former Catholics. All of a sudden they became, experts on everything. You have publications that are like, they guard their own little factions, and nearly all of them are done by laymen to support their families. So they have agendas, they have connections, they have ties. They're not done as apostolates. If you're a Catholic in the United States, you know that there's no Catholic paper that is independent. They're all done to either make money or support families. And so there's no really forum for Catholics to speak. It's amazing because America has such free speech, but yet is no Catholic free speech forum. So we hope to be that kind of a medium for faithful Catholics who believe the whole faith, not for crazy liberals or people trying to claim that to be a Catholic, you must be something else. Or if you're something else, then you're a true Catholic. Help Order Militaris, make a pledge there at the bottom of any page or any article, and Order Militaris Inc. will match your donation up to $200.
Now, back to the programming. There's an interesting person who makes a claim in a book, Clerical Error. Robert Blair Kaiser says that Malachi Martin seduced his wife.
Yeah, it's a rather amazing claim, and what gives this claim substance is that Robert Blair Kaiser was Time Magazine's former Vatican correspondent. Okay, so this is not a nobody. Okay, you don't become a Vatican correspondent for Time Magazine unless you're a person of some repute and ability and professionality. And one thing about journalists is they're not going to launch claims in print unless they have evidence to back it up. They want to be sued for a libel or a calumny. So the allegation is pretty substantive, and it's about his own wife. So very painful for a married man to write about something like that. And they attempt to attack him on the grounds that he suffered from paranoia, schizophrenia. But it's one thing to suffer from a mental disease, another thing to write a book. Okay, yeah. And so it's a very serious charge, and this isn't the only charge made about Father Malachi Martin. I've seen allegations made that 2 other husbands have come forward and said that he had affairs with their wives and used his role as a priest to conceal that. A further individual after his death claimed that he had an affair in the 50s with a so-called Wanda Jablonski. Okay. So this kind of has to do a lot with the controversy. People always ask, well, why did Father Malachi Martin give up being a priest, and is he a priest anymore, and how did he get dispensed, and why he got dispensed? And so in subsequent to these allegations that were brought up about him, and especially after his death, there's Catholics wondering if that's why he got laicized. Because in canon law, if you attempt marriage as a priest, you will be laicized. Okay. Attempt marriage means you go to a civil authority and you pull up marriage certificate with a woman. Or at least you try to get married to a woman. The other reason you could be laicized is if you are found in bed with a minor, okay, of either sex, or if you have a child out of wedlock, okay. So now, who's to say? We don't know about the man, but after he leaves the Jesuits and he comes to New York and works as a taxi driver and dishwasher, it kind of gives you the idea that he had some serious moral collapse in his life. But he claims in one of his books that he was hired by Cardinal Bea to blackmail other cardinals to get them to do what the liberals wanted at Vatican II. And so if he was involved in that kind of level of wickedness, that would cause a spiritual collapse. So that's the controversy around Father Martin that really puts the whole shadow over what he wrote and his moral authority or his authority on any issue, what he said he stood for.
Yeah. I'm looking at an article I linked to the show page on who is Father Malachi Martin from Paleo Orthodoxy. It goes into a little more detail from Kaiser. Kaiser goes on to tell of another woman who, after being seduced by Martin, was simply dropped as if she never existed. She made contact with Martin's brother in Dublin, who told her, "I don't know you. I must tell you. You are the fourth woman who has come here asking me the same question about Malachi. All of them have essentially the same story to tell. They were in love with Malachi and thought he was in love with them." The woman was dumbfounded and asked, "Four women? Four women?" And Malachi's brother affirmed that and then told her, "And one rather attractive young man." That's from his
Okay.
brother.
Well, let us first say that that is hearsay evidence.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone's entitled to a good reputation, but some people are, some people have problems. Let us say, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be seen. I don't want anyone to think that I'm besmirching the entire Irish race, but among Irish American men, there are high incidences of bisexuality and homosexuality because there's a terrible vice in many, not all, Irish families of a completely super dominant mother and a completely subdominant father, and it leads to social psychological dysfunctions among the children where women act like men and men act like women, get all mixed up. So is this possible? Certainly possible, but we can't really draw any conclusion on the basis of that one claim in the book, unless the other women all came forward. But you have to understand that some women are attracted by priests, and if a priest doesn't dress as a priest, he's getting himself in trouble because he's nevertheless a man. Becoming a priest doesn't mean you're no longer a man. Okay, that's why it's very important to always wear your priestly garb or your habit, because even if you don't feel like habit, it's your protection by remaining faithful. And that, if it is true, then that adds more credence to why he was laicized. He was just, caught in flagrante delicto in some fashion. That's a Latin phrase meaning he was caught in the act of something of which was incontrovertible. And, it's a terrible thing for priests because they commit a sin against their priesthood. That's a sacrilege. If it's a married woman, then they're committing a sacrilege against the sacrament of matrimony with the woman, and then the fornicating, that's on top. And usually they cover these things up. There's things like abortion going on or contraception with even more moral sins. It's a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
So, complete nightmare.
I know you probably haven't. I know you haven't read the book Windswept House, but it sort of goes into the history behind Cardinal Bernardine of Chicago, where it where he did where it's been reported and found out he did satanic dark rituals in a place in North Carolina, which this is why some Catholics say the house in Windswept House is, in fact, the place is where it took place. And when you told about the year it was written, that even makes me question even more. If he, if he had the, how did he know that these rituals were happening in the, if in the Vatican, but then also at North Carolina at the same time? How did he know what was actually going on to describe what took place in the book?
Okay, so just because he wrote it in the book doesn't mean he knew anything, okay? That's the first thing, it's a novel. However, for those of you who don't know, I'll let you into a big secret. Priests and monks are the biggest gossipers on the face of the earth. If you want to know what anything is going on, you just talk to one, but they're only among themselves. I mean, priests with priests, monks with monks. They don't talk about the laity. You just go visit a monastery for a while, you'll hear all the rat. And there's always someone in the monastery or the rectory that is the one with all the juicy information. And talk to him long enough over a cup of coffee, or maybe if it's a bit of spiked with some Irish cream, you'll get him to talk. So, and the Irish, there are a few people more talkative than the Irish. Maybe only the Jews outdo the Irish in how talkative they are. So it might very well he had heard what was going on. I mean, so many people involved with within the McCarrick case alone. Okay, that there must have been a lot of talk. Okay, you just can't hide that many victims. Okay, and it seems like from what has come out in just recent years that nearly all the bishops in America knew about it. So I think someone like Father Martin would have an easy way of knowing in general about it, not enough to actually say exactly where, or exactly how, or exactly when, or exactly with who, but enough at least to put it in a book and make some money off of it. So, you know, that's, you could use it as, he probably, what he wrote in the book could never be used as evidence in a court of law or anything like that, but it shows you that it was entered the culture in the sense of it was already a known fact among many clergy that someone could be writing novels about similar things. And, you know, and it has come out that there were satanic rituals during acts of sexual abuse, okay, which is almost incomprehensible. But St. Alphonsus says that even in his own century, and that was in the 1700s, that heretical clergy were involved in satanic rituals and sodomy together. Okay? Probably because the act of sodomy is so vicious against one of the two people that only a Satanist would get involved in it. Only someone who's completely diabolical would want to give that much pain to another human being just so that he could get a little pleasure out of it, or maybe just gets more pleasure out of giving people pain. So that's one of those, why he wrote it, how we know it, went to the grave with him, probably.
Yeah. Just makes you wonder and ask and like, and why share what? Yeah. Mm. Yeah, why share all that nasty stuff and
Obviously, he just wanted to sell books, you know. Not every ex-priest descends to such a level, okay? Many go back, become good, honest citizens because it was just a vocational decision. They realized it wasn't their vocation. But some people fall from the priesthood in the sense of they turn against the path of virtue. And I mean, a Catholic shouldn't write such books, in my opinion. I mean, you shouldn't write things that are lurid and things like that. There's enough of that junk in the world. A Catholic has to write that. Even if you have the talent to write it and you're inspired to write it and your imagination is running all about it, you know, it's kind of the same virtue of when to keep your mouth shut. Okay, it's the same thing, when to keep your pen from writing. But someone is extremely loquacious, eloquent, learned. It just comes off the pen so quickly, and if you can make money from it, it's a big temptation. So, you know, he probably regrets now having written some parts, at least, of some of his books, because God will judge us on everything we do. And when you write something, you're even more responsible because that remains. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You say some unkind word to someone in private and you make up later, well, no one's a witness of it. You say something in writing, it's grave. Okay. It's grave. So, and you will be judged on that much more severely.
Once again, we are pausing for station identity. This is Ordo Terrace Radio TV. Listen live at ordo-militaris.net. And you can call in to the studio using our Skype studio number, +1 785 672 9560. Please call in, folks. We'd like to take your questions, your comments, anything regarding Father Malachi Martin. Hopefully, we can answer them. If not, just like to hear your comments about the show going on currently. Now on to the what does he believe about Fatima and the missing part to the third secret?
Well, what he said in his writings was that John the 23rd read the third secret, and to not offend the Russians, he kept quiet about it. And it was a deliberate decision. More than that, how certain we can be. It appears that it was Our Lady's will that the secret be made known. So for John the 23rd to oppose the will of the Queen of Heaven is a most grave sin. And this was 1960, before the council was called. And we know how the church from that year on goes, and the church is almost completely wiped out now. There's almost no true doctrine. Mass is all screwed up with these crazy COVID controls. We don't even have the mass that they had in the 1960s anymore, except in small little places here and there.
Yeah.
And no one knows the faith anymore. I mean, not even the clergy. And very few people have the fortitude to even preach the truth and try to rebuild up everything. And if any good formation program is started, like a seminary or monastery, it's immediately viciously attacked by the bishops and everyone in the Vatican, because they're just completely lost. They're lost individuals.
Yeah.
And so that's the result of the sin of John the 23rd. That's how deep and black it was. Because we're not just talking about some mystic who had a vision and people thought she was pious, and so they trusted in it, you know, like Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. Her mystical visions don't have any divine approval that's extraordinary. We just regard her life of holiness as a testament to it. But Sister Lucia wrote what she wrote to the Pope because there was a miracle at Fatima on October 13th, 1917, seen by 70,000 people, the greatest public miracle in the history of mankind after the crossing of the Red Sea, okay? Greater than the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves, because only 5,000 people present for that. Maybe there's 25,000, but it was secret. No one saw the miracle multiplication of loaves. Christ blessed the bread and then it started multiplying in the basket. But here is in the heavens, everyone sees the sun fall nearly to the ground. Everyone was drenched to the skin in rain prior to this. And when the event stops, everyone's clothing is perfectly dry. And the soil is perfectly dry as if it hadn't had rain in many days. No one can deny that is an act of God, okay? And if an act of God certified the truthfulness of these children and what they heard from Our Lady, you better obey it or you're going to have the wrath of God. And reflecting on that over many years, because anyone who's devoted to Our Lady of Fatima knows these facts already, I have to say that I think that explains everything. I think God just withdrew his grace. He's like, if you're not going to do what you know must be my will, then you're not people of faith, and I'm going to withdraw my grace. And you're going to see what's going to happen to the church when I withdraw my grace from my ministers, okay? And because we are not guaranteed the grace of God. Only being faithful can you merit more grace from God.
Yeah.
Once you commit so many sins, and if you turn away from God, that's it. It's like you can't demand that sunlight falls on you if you're standing under a tree, okay, or walk into a cave. Now, maybe under a tree, some light's going to come through, and you get background light, you get reflecting light, so it's not totally dark. But if you go into a cave and lock the door, you can't expect any light because you've chosen to go in a land of complete darkness. Now, when God works the greatest miracle in the history of mankind after the crossing of the Red Sea, and you decide that you're not, because of your little pet project of the council, you're not going to announce it to the world, you've gone into a cave and locked the door behind you. And all the popes since then who have not revealed it have done the same thing. So on that account, they are deprived of the light of grace and they've done crazy things. And I think that's the biggest explanation. Some people say it's because they're heretics and stuff, but there are sins in a certain sense worse than heresy. And that is knowing that God is in front of you and you're closing your eyes to him. And don't we see that in everything? I mean, if the clergy don't even believe that Jesus can heal you by their touch, they want to say mass with a mask on and give him to you in gloves and insist you receive him in the hand as if he's a piece of bread.
Yeah.
They've lost completely the light of faith. Although intellectually they might still agree to everything, they will not put it in practice. Now, how can that be? It looks like they've been unplugged from the life of grace.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was young, there were still lots of priests and religious that wanted Fatima, Russia consecrated to Our Lady and devoted to Our Lady of Fatima. Now it's very few. You almost never hear that talked about anymore. And they say, oh, well, John Paul II consecrated Russia and Russia's converted. Russia is still an Orthodox country, an atheist country, as far as I know. You know, Putin's not a Catholic, and Patriarch Cyril didn't enter into communion with Rome. So if you say that's conversion, you're just blaspheming because that's an out and out.
Yeah. Brother, can you do some advertisements? I'm going to take a bathroom break.
Okay. Okay. So we'll take a little break here, a service break. Let me tell you about this beautiful flag here. Let me see it. I think if I turn my camera, you might see it better, but you'll have to turn your head over. Okay, you'll have to turn your own camera over or your cell phone. So that is Marc Antonio Colonna's flag that he flew on his flagship at the Battle of Lepanto on October 7th, 1571. He was chief admiral of the Catholic Armada at the Battle of Lepanto, where the Ottoman Turks wanted to invade Europe and invade Italy in particular and subjugate it to Islam, massacre everyone. And Pope St. Pius V, a Dominican, great saint, great pope, he organized in the spring of that year a Holy League, the Holy League of 1571, where the Republic of Venice, the Duchy of Austria, the Papal States, and the Kingdom of Spain entered into alliance to provide men and fleets to resist the Turkish invasion because they're spies at Constantinople told them that the Turks were going to invade in the fall. And this was the flag, that portion there of the flag with the cross of our Lord and the four shields of the powers. That's, let me get this right. That's the shield of Venice. That's the shield of St. Pius V. That's the shield of the King of Spain. And that's the shield of Don Juan of Austria. And they put their trust in our Lord. They drew their swords in the name of our Lord. They put fire to their cannons in the name of the Lord. And Pius V, back at Rome, had all Christendom pray the rosary. And the Catholics had the victory, even though they were outnumbered like 2 or 3 to 1. And it was a very vicious battle. It went on the whole day. And many ships were destroyed. Thousands of men drowned. Thousands were killed. And but the Catholics had the victory, and they saved Western Europe from Turkish invasion. And that was the last great naval battle of Islam against Christianity, because the destruction of the Turkish fleet led, in consequence, allowed the European naval powers to take complete control of the Mediterranean for the most part. And this is a historic reproduction, okay? As an anthropologist, I researched the history of the original flag, the colors and the dyes that were used, its proportion and dimension, and how it was flown on a ship. And it was flown as a gonfalon, which catches the wind, and it can be seen behind the ship. And this flag is 1 meter wide and 1.8 meters long. So it's about 38 inches, 42 inches wide. And consequently, it's more than 80 inches long. And it's printed, it's actually printed on polyester. And you can see the design on both sides of the flag. You can see it, it goes right through. And have it on a 12-foot piece of PVC with another pipe in between there. I rigged it up so I can stand to take photos. And this flag is now for sale by Ordo Militaris Inc., which is selling it to raise money to help Christians. So Ordo Militaris Inc. is a for-profit company. And we love, because the 450th anniversary of the Battle of Lepanto is coming up, to manufacture this flag in tens of thousands, because it's a great Catholic flag. The large version is being sold for $250 in the United States, and that includes shipping and handling to anywhere in the world. Just go to ordo-militaris.us, then go to the tab for shop, and then look for flags, and then Lepanto flag. And 3 people have already ordered one, and I think either today or in the next few days they'll get theirs. And it's a beautiful flag, brilliant colors, and the money raised from the sale of these flags goes for the works of Ordo Militaris, to help persecuted Christians. We'd like to increase the production of that. So if there's any investors out there who'd like to help us produce tens of thousands of these, we can make a business arrangement with you to share some of the proceeds from that, in return for letting us use the capital to produce the flag, because we don't have the capital to produce these in numbers. We can only produce them in small quantities, and so that's why the price is what it is for this flag. If we could produce it in larger quantities, we could probably bring the price down 50%, and that would take an investment. So if there's anyone out there who'd like to invest, but if you just want one of these flags, just just go to the website and you can order one with credit card from anywhere in the world, okay? And our volunteers in the US will ship one out to you. And it's a beautiful flag. And if you buy one because you're watching Ordo Militaris Radio TV, then a portion of those proceeds will go to Ordo Militaris Radio TV for its equipment. So this is your chance to get a beautiful flag, help Ordo Militaris, and help Ordo Militaris Radio TV, all 3 at the same time. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I should mention the fact, if you're devoted to Our Lady of the Rosary, this is her flag, because Our Lady of the Rosary, the feast day, was originally called Our Lady of Victory because of the Battle of Lepanto. So if you have a statue of Our Lady of Victory or Our Lady of the Rosary, or your church is dedicated to that, or your church is dedicated to St. Pius V, then this is the flag you want. If you're a member of a group called the St. Pius V Society, of the Society of St. Pius V, you probably also want a copy of this flag. Okay, no endorsement implied, but it's a beautiful historic replica, and I have brought this one to Santa Maria Maggiore, where St. Pius V is buried, and I think he probably would be very pleased of that case. So that's one way you can help Ordo Militaris, and that's what that flag is behind me. I put it there because it's such a beautiful flag, and it has such a great historical importance for Christendom and for those devoted to Our Lady, her power to intercede for Catholics, even in the most crucial trials of history.
Yeah, it's very beautiful flags. Get one, folks. I mean, $250, and it includes shipping to wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
Yeah, you can't get that anywhere else.
And it's polyester, so water won't damage it. So if you're a retired naval officer, and we get many retired naval officers that love this flag, it's great. You hang this on your boat, and you're going to stand out from the crowd. Okay. And in previous years, we also produced one that is tiny for $40 for the kids could hold during parades and processions. In previous years, we had a processional one with a gold fringe on it. We're not offering that one this year because we cannot find someone to manufacture it in the United States. The previous manufacturer tripled his price in just 2 years, and it makes it. We could offer that one, but it'd be $1,000, and that was, who's going to offer for $1,000 for one of those? So this design is the intellectual property of Ordo Militaris. We had an artist design it, and so we can put this on anything. We can put it on mugs, T-shirts, stickers. We offer it on bumper stickers and little postal stickers if you'd like. You can get the same image. So, but we do it because it's a way of raising funds for Ordo Militaris. Because we've asked a lot of people to help us raise funds for persecuted Christians in the Mideast. We got some people helping us in 2016, but since then they've only wanted flags from us. Well, if we can raise money for the cause of Christ anyway, that's what we're here for. That's what the Ordo Militaris Inc. exists to do.
Now to weird stories from the New York Post on Father Malachi Martin about his death. I'll just read it to you. It is by Leah Ustowich from January 13th, 2017. Title: Exorcist priest died after possessed child spoke to him. A possessed child is believed to be the culprit behind the death of the Irish priest who inspired The Exorcist, a new documentary claims. Malachi Martin went to perform an exorcism on a 4-year-old girl in Connecticut in 1999, but mysteriously died soon after when he was pushed by an invisible force. In the Netflix documentary Hostage to the Devil, Martin's pal and former CIA agent Robert Merrow recalled how when Martin went to greet the girl at her home, the child said to him, "So, you're Malachi Martin. You think you can help her?" Merrow frequently drove Martin to carry out exorcisms and said he was there the day of the creepy interaction, according to the Mirror, which is a UK online newspaper. Robert is a former CIA agent, and this is the most disturbing thing he'd ever seen in all of his years working for the U.S. government. the documentary producer writer Rachel Lysite told the Mirror. Martin died at age 78 after suffering from head trauma in the fall, the Daily Mail reported. The which documentary, which debuts Sunday, takes a look into Martin's work as a Jesuit priest, professor, author, and most notably an exorcist, a career he turned to after moving to New York in 1966, according to the Mirror. When he left the church, he moved to New York in 1966, and he had various jobs, including taxi driver, waiter, and writer too. But really, he saw that there was a need there for people to be assisted and to be given support in terms of relief, I suppose, from some sort of either demonic infestation or someone themselves or their home, and felt that the church wasn't providing support any, anymore, said Eyesight.
That is strange. But they don't tell us what actually happened. It's kind of like a teaser to watch the documentary.
Yeah.
Um, this thing is true. If you're not a virtuous person, you should not perform exorcisms if you're a priest. And if you're not a priest, you shouldn't perform them even if you are, because it's for a priest to do. And because it's dangerous. If you are not in the state of grace and you're present at an exorcism, the demons can jump from that possessed person into you because the doors are wide open. You're not in the state of grace. And if you are attached to a vice, the demons can stir that vice up and take you down a few days later. So I don't recommend it. A lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of it. That's just not true. Okay. Yeah, if you're in the state of grace and you're a man of great virtue, okay, yes, go and help the priest at the exorcism. But if you're not, you should be reluctant, because you have to understand that you, by not being perfectly faithful to God, are already in some way friends of the devil, and you don't want to be near them when they get angry, okay? If they have some rope on your soul or claw in your life, they're going to pull it, okay? Because they just want destruction. So if it is true that he had affairs with these women and never repented of them, performing exorcism was probably the most dangerous thing you could do, okay? So it's certainly possible, but who's to say, because that report doesn't really say much. It gives you like a tantalizing of it, as if they want to convince you just to watch the documentary.
Yeah. And kind of odd too about his friend. The CIA.
You mean that his friend was CIA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all, you know. Whether he was currently in the CIA or just ex-CIA. His books were so full of so much talk about so many things. I wouldn't be surprised if the CIA tasked someone to follow him around just to find out if he's a source of real intelligence on the Vatican, yes or no. Okay? Yeah. So, you know, the CIA tries to get information from anywhere they can. And you have to, that doesn't mean they're your friends. We've talked a lot about the CIA already, so no point in that. But.
That's all I got on Martin, unless you have something else.
There's a lot better books you can read than Father Martin, okay? You know, people spend so much time reading his books. Why didn't you read the Gospels and then read the Old Testament, okay? Be at least a literate Christian. You could read the Doctors or Fathers of the Church. You could read the biography of any saint, okay? Because if you read the biography of the saint, once you're done, you're going to be be so inspired to live your Christian life that it was a great benefit. I remember reading the life of Saint Rose of Lima when I was like 16 years old, and I can still remember what is in that book, and it still inspires me to practice virtue. So you read something like Windspread House, your head's just going to be full of all these images for years, and You might even get a, you might, if you actually believe it's history, you might actually start seeing history through the novel rather than, and you shouldn't do that because it's a novel, it's not history. So read something better than that, it's just like, it's just like how much hours you waste watching movies out of Hollywood. It's complete waste because there's nothing remains of it that's ever good. Okay. So.
Yeah. Um, well, folks, this ends our first video. About an hour, 20 minutes early on our first topic, who is Father Malachi Martin. I hope you have enjoyed part one of today's show. We'll end this video right now and sign off. This is Order Militaris Radio signing off on part one. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.